255-pound 7-year-old dies in one of the most bizarre alleged murder cases ever, the Casper O'Brien case analysis. Hello, and welcome to 48 Hours True Crime. Today, we examine the heartbreaking and disturbing case of Casper O'Brien, a 7-year-old boy whose death has shocked both the public and the legal community. Prosecutors allege that the very thing meant to sustain his life, food, became the weapon that ultimately contributed to his death. In this analysis, we'll explore the family's background, reconstruct the timeline of events, examine the evidence presented by investigators, and discuss whether the charges of second-degree murder are legally and morally justified. Background: Casper Jacob Shane O'Brien was born on September 25, 2018, and lived with his family in Flint, Michigan, a city located approximately 68 miles northwest of Detroit. Once known as one of America's automotive manufacturing hubs, Flint has struggled for decades with factory closures, unemployment, population decline, and widespread poverty. Casper lived with his parents, Damien O'Brien and Jessica O'Brien, who married in October 2013. According to his LinkedIn profile, Damien earned a bachelor's degree in information technology in 2014 and later worked as a senior cloud engineer for Delta Dental of Michigan. In May 2020, the couple welcomed a daughter, Ilana. They also had a son named Phoenix, who was tragically stillborn. The family of four lived in a modest 962-square-foot home on Dania Street along with 4 dogs. Timeline of the alleged crime. On the morning of November 4, 2025, shortly before 9 a.m., Jessica O'Brien called 911, reporting that her 7-year-old son was not breathing. When emergency responders arrived, they encountered conditions that investigators later described as among the worst they had ever seen. The home was reportedly filled with mountains of garbage and severe filth. One responding officer wrote that the condition of the residence could not adequately be described in words. So much trash covered the floors that officers couldn't even determine what type of flooring existed beneath it. The clutter was so extensive that paramedics and police officers could not occupy the house simultaneously. While paramedics entered to treat Casper, officers were forced to remain outside due to the lack of space. Casper was found lying on a makeshift bed where he slept alongside both parents and his younger sister. All 4 family members reportedly shared the same bed. Investigators also discovered a single non-functioning toilet overflowing with human waste. Casper was transported to Hurley Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead. The medical examiner determined that he died from dilated cardiomyopathy, with morbid obesity identified as a significant contributing factor. At just 7 years old, Casper measured approximately 50.5 inches tall but weighed an astonishing 255 pounds. For a child of his height and age, a healthy weight would typically range between 50 and 73 pounds. Authorities also removed Casper's 5-year-old sister, Ilana, from the home. Investigators reported that she was also morbidly obese, extremely dirty, had severely matted hair, and was running around unclothed when officers arrived. She was placed into emergency foster care. Even the family's 4 dogs required veterinary treatment due to their condition. On June 24, 2026, 40-year-old Damien O'Brien and 41-year-old Jessica O'Brien were arrested and charged with multiple offenses, including second-degree murder and torture. If convicted, they could each face life imprisonment. At the time of this recording, a probable cause hearing is scheduled for July 2, 2026, and both defendants remain jailed without bond. Authorities have clarified that the death of the couple's stillborn son, Phoenix, is not considered suspicious. Analysis. Like every criminal defendant, Damien and Jessica are presumed innocent unless proven guilty in court. Some observers may argue that, even if the parents were criminally negligent, the facts support charges such as involuntary manslaughter rather than second-degree murder. Michigan prosecutors disagree. Their argument centers on the doctrine of implied malice, alleging that the parents demonstrated a knowing and willful disregard for the overwhelming likelihood that their conduct would cause death or serious bodily injury. So the central legal question becomes: does the evidence support second-degree murder? Let's examine both sides. Evidence supporting the charges. The prosecution's strongest argument is that Casper's condition was impossible to overlook. At 255 pounds, his obesity was extreme and unmistakable. Any reasonable caregiver would recognize that something was seriously wrong and that urgent medical intervention was necessary. Records indicate that Casper reportedly visited a physician only once during his life in February 2024. During that appointment, he already weighed 104 pounds. His primary care physician referred him to a pediatric endocrinologist, but despite having health insurance, his parents allegedly never scheduled the specialist appointment. Over the next 21 months, Casper gained an additional 151 pounds, averaging more than 7 pounds every month, until reaching 255 pounds shortly before his death. According to prosecutors, Casper was nonverbal, likely due to autism spectrum disorder. He was bedridden, unable to move independently, medically neglected, and forced to live in deplorable conditions. Investigators reported that he suffered from bed sores, skin rashes, and numerous untreated medical problems. Authorities allege that his immobility resulted directly from years of inadequate nutrition, lack of exercise, failure to obtain medical treatment, and living in an unsafe environment. His diet reportedly consisted primarily of potato chips and French fries because of texture sensitivities. His younger sister also showed clear signs of severe neglect. Prosecutors even described her as appearing feral. Neither child reportedly attended school, and officials stated that government agencies, including the local school district, Child Protective Services, and law enforcement, were unaware that the children even existed. Investigators also noted that, before calling 911 for Casper, the parents reportedly contacted a veterinarian regarding one of their dogs, suggesting they understood how to seek professional assistance when they chose to. The condition of the home further strengthened the prosecution's case. Garbage covered nearly every room. The only toilet no longer functioned and was filled with human waste. All 4 family members slept together in a single makeshift bed. Despite these conditions, Damon maintained stable employment, indicating the family had financial resources sufficient to purchase large amounts of food. Evidence favoring the defense. The defense may argue that this case is far more complicated than simple neglect. Casper reportedly suffered from significant developmental challenges. He was nonverbal, likely autistic, disliked contact with water, frequently resisted bathing, and experienced behavioral outbursts. Managing his daily care may have been extraordinarily difficult. Investigators also observed signs consistent with severe hoarding. If either parents suffered from hoarding disorder or another untreated psychiatric illness, their perception of reality may have become profoundly distorted. People with severe hoarding disorder often lack insight into the severity of their living conditions and may genuinely fail to recognize dangerous environments. If that were true here, the home's filth might reflect severe mental illness rather than deliberate cruelty. Although clearly inadequate, Casper was not completely denied medical care. His parents did seek treatment once in 2024. Furthermore, when Casper stopped breathing, Jessica immediately called 911. If her goal had been to intentionally kill her son, calling emergency services would seem inconsistent with that objective. Authorities themselves stated that virtually no government agency knew Casper existed. Had Jessica chosen not to report his death, investigators may never have discovered the case. Unlike many homicide cases, there was no firearm, knife, poison, or physical assault. Casper's death resulted from a complex combination of chronic medical neglect and severe obesity. My opinion. After reviewing the available evidence, I believe the prosecution has a compelling argument that Damon and Jessica acted with such extreme and prolonged disregard for Casper's welfare that a jury could reasonably find them guilty of second-degree murder. The defense may be able to explain how the family descended into dysfunction. It does not adequately explain why that dysfunction was allowed to continue until a 7-year-old child died. In my view, the couple gradually normalized conditions that most people would immediately recognize as horrifying. The filth. The overflowing toilet. The mountains of garbage. Casper's catastrophic weight gain. His inability to walk. His worsening health. These warning signs became part of everyday life inside the home. It is possible that one or both parents suffered from hoarding disorder or another significant psychiatric condition. Such illnesses can reduce insight, distort judgment, and contribute to profound denial. Personality disorders commonly associated with hoarding, particularly avoidant personality disorder, may also have discouraged the family from seeking outside help due to shame, fear of criticism, or social withdrawal. Another possibility is that the parents gradually became desensitized to their surroundings. What would be unbearable for most people may have come to feel normal to them after years of living in those conditions. Regardless of the psychological explanation, the outcome remained devastating. A 7-year-old child died after years of apparent medical neglect, while another child was rescued from the same environment. Ultimately, whether the evidence proves second-degree murder beyond a reasonable doubt will be decided by a jury. These are simply my observations based on the publicly available information. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next case.